Let's talk about how to use just curves and masks to create creative looks like this in Photoshop. So without any further ado, let's get started. So here we are in Photoshop, and if you want to download this photo, make sure to go ahead and check the links in the description and download them. Alright, so this is obviously the after and this is the before. Now if I open up the group, have a look, a lot of curves adjustment layers have been applied. There's one hue saturation too, and this looks a little complex. Actually, it looks very complex, but in actuality, it's really simple to work with. Let's start right from scratch. Let's delete this group, and there you have it, the image plain as it is, as you have downloaded and opened that up in Photoshop. Now, there are two approaches to adding special effects. Now, I'm not talking about retouching or any of the fundamental Lightroom stuff. That stuff might have to follow a step, but this doesn't. Effects doesn't. Now, there are two approaches. Number one, apply the small effects first. Build up on the small effects and then slowly, gradually move to the larger or the bigger effect. The second approach is apply the dominant or the big effect first and then fine-tune the small effects. My personal favorite is the second approach, because when you're building up on small effects, especially when they're non-destructive, when you're building up on those, we really don't know where this is leading us to. But when we apply the dominant effects first and then we fine-tune that, we exactly get what we envision. Okay, so second approach is my favorite. So in this example, we want some light coming through the window because she's holding the hand like that. It seems like some bright light is coming through. So let's add a curves adjustment layer. Click on this adjustment layer icon and let's choose curves. We want this to be brighter, right? So we'll take this up. Very simple. Just like this. We want this to be a little faded. So we'll take this up. Faded means the shadows are brighter, right? Left side are the shadows and right side are the highlights. Now if I take this point and take it up, I'm making the shadows brighter. Think of it this way. This is the input, this axis, or the horizontal axis, that is the input, and the vertical axis, that is the output. So I'm choosing the input, I'm choosing the shadows and making it brighter. Okay. So the output, have a look. Input is 0 because I'm choosing the leftmost point, and output is 44. As I said, this is the output, this is the input. In other words, this is the brightness levels that we are targeting. This is the brightness levels that we are targeting, and this is the result. Okay. So if I want to make the highlights a little brighter, I will make a point here because right side is the highlight and left side is the shadows, and make it brighter. So if I take this point up, that highlight area becomes brighter. You get it? Right. Okay. Let's go back. Let's make it brighter and make it faded. Now you want the highlights to be a little more yellowish. So how to get yellow? Simple. Decrease the blues, because blue is the opposite of yellow. Always remember, RGB is the opposite of CMY. R is the opposite of C. Red is the opposite of cyan. G, green, is the opposite of magenta, CM. And B, blue, is the opposite of yellow, CMY, RGB. Makes sense? Alright. Now, we want to add some yellow, so we will go to blues and decrease the blues. Like that. And now as you can see, there's too much green in it. So we will go to greens and decrease the greens. Give it a little magenta look. Now, come back to RGB, which is the brightness or the luminosity levels. Increase the brightness a bit more. Make it a little more faded, like that. And there you have it. I want to make it a little more yellowish. So we'll go to blues once again and decrease the blues even more, a bit. Now it's time for us to create a mask. To do that, simple. Select the mask. And then we want to add a little bit of gradient, right? The light coming out of the window and then fading away on the right. How to do that? Select the gradient tool and then choose white to black. Right now it's black to white. Press X to toggle between the foreground and the background color, and this way it becomes white to black. And then create a gradient like that. Click and drag it out to this. Okay. That way we have added the light. You can play with it as much as you like. Maybe I'll play with it like that. Yep, that looks good. Now we might come back to the curves and we might play with it even more, make it even more brighter like that. And come back to the mask and just play with the values of. Okay, that looks good. Once you're satisfied with this, you can add some more curves. Maybe you want to add one more layer of light. So let's add one more curves adjustment layer and just brighten it up like this. And this one, I don't want to fade it, and maybe add a little bit of magenta to this. Okay, so similarly in this, we'll just add, and this one probably I'll take a brush and do it. So I'll take a brush, paint the whole mask black. How to do that? Controller Command A. The gradient didn't work. Let's paint it black again. Controller Command A, and then make sure the foreground color is black by pressing X. You can toggle between the foreground and the background. Press X and then Alt Backspace. It's completely black. Control or Command D. Now you can take the brush, make sure the foreground color is white, and paint in, just dab in the area which you want it to be bright. So I dabbed in that area. The flow was low, I guess. Increase the flow to 100. I just dabbed. Now that looks pretty good. You can do that as well. Now come back to the properties. You can also increase the contrast of that area if you want, just like this. And there you have it. You can also just make it a little bit faded. Okay, now we want to add a little bit magenta to the walls. So create another curves adjustment layer. See, we are stacking up curves, right? So we'll just go to the greens and add a little magenta there. Little magenta too. And we'll add just to the dark areas. So RGB, and we can just darken this area up a little, add a little contrast, and then open up the blend ifs probably. So double click on the right hand side of the layer, and we want this just to be applied to the dark areas, not to the bright areas. So take the slider of the underlying layer from right to left. Now this is very harsh, so we would hold Alt or Option, click on this, separate it, and make it softer, just like this. That way we have added just to the dark areas. Have a look, before, after, right? It looks brilliant. Now you can add some more effects. You can just add a blue effect to the shadows. Now if you think it's too bright, this area is too bright, you can select it and decrease the opacity, just like this. And let's add one more curves adjustment layer. You can just stack in curves as much as you want. You want to add some blues here in the dark areas, so we would go to blues and then just drag it up like that and make it a U shape so that we don't affect the bright areas. Here we go, before, after. Now let's get the overall image a little more magenta-ish. So in the same one, we can go to the greens and decrease the greens for the overall image, just like this. Now have a look at the before and after of the overall image by holding the Alt or Option and clicking on the background layer. So this shows you the before, and this is the after. Now you can just stack in different ones. So I'll add one more layer of curves, and this one I'll just add a little more brightness and paint the mask completely black. Select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I. Now I'll take the brush, make sure the foreground color is white, and just paint in just particular areas, okay? The bright areas which need to shine, just like her face. Just paint in here a little bit, paint in her hand a little bit, paint in her shirt to the left hand side where the light is coming from, paint in the pillow like that, and paint in her hand. Okay, that looks good. Now you can apply blend if here too. Double click on the right hand side of the layer and take the slider of the underlying layer from left to right. Hold the Alt Option, click on it, and apply that effect. Gives it a lot more dimension. Have a look at the before and after. So this is the before, this is the after. You can delete some extra areas, select the mask, take the brush, make sure the foreground color is black, X to toggle between the foreground and the background, and then you can just delete in some extra areas that you painted accidentally. Okay, and it's done. Have a look. Before, after, you have added some highlights here and there. You can just apply some color lookups too. So you can just click on the adjustment layer icon and choose color lookup. Who's stopping you to do that? So select any color lookup that you like. Maybe this one. Just play with this. Whoa. Now you can apply this as a top up, as an overall effect. Let's turn this off for now. Let me teach you something which is very interesting. How to add lights to this. Okay, so how to add shadows to this. Create another curves adjustment layer just for brightness. Okay, brightness and fadedness. brightness and fadedness, and maybe add a little yellow to it. Go to blues and just add a little yellow to it. Okay, there you go. Now paint it completely with black. Controller Command I. Take the brush, make it very big, just like this, and dab once with white. Foreground color white X, and dab once. Okay, there you go. Now you can just come back to the properties and make it even more brighter. Okay, like that. Now what you can do, put it inside a group. Okay, put it inside a group. We cannot use this mask right now because this is very soft and we want it to be non-destructive. So we'll use double mask method. What is double mask method? That's something I named, but it's a really great way to create two masks for one layer. Now, here's an important thing. A group can have one layer, right? A group doesn't have to have a lot of layers. It can have one layer also. So put this inside a group, just this layer. Select this layer and press Ctrl or Command G. Now for the group, you can have another mask. Create a mask for the group. That way you have two masks for just one curves adjustment layer. You don't have to fiddle with this mask because if you do, if you want to later change it, you cannot. This is applying some other effect of fadedness, of light coming in. You don't want to play with that. Let's play with this mask. Okay. All you have to do, select the polygonal lasso tool, make a quick selection of this, and probably the light is coming from this side, and you can make something like this. Join it like that, and you can paint that area in black. You can fill that area in black. You can do that very easily by making sure the foreground color is black. Press X and press Alt backspace. Option delete if you are using a Mac. Now as you can see, it's given a very nice shadow, but you cannot see it because it's not so bright. Select the curves adjustment layer, select the properties and make it a little more brighter for you to see that effect. And just like this. Now you're able to see that. Let's blur it out a bit. So you can blur it out by selecting the mask and increasing the feather. That looks fantastic. Now you can play with it. Select the mask, take the brush and just paint in some extra areas in black. And there you have a nice effect. If you want to play more with it, you can take the brush and just fade this area because that's the end. And you have this effect. And there you have it. I could have had it more brighter and this could have been a little more darker, this one. So I've made it a little darker. So you can always go ahead and play with these effects, and this is the final result. And as always, to top it all up, you can add other adjustment layers also. Who's stopping you, by the way? Just add a color lookup adjustment layer like that and maybe change it to foggy night. Wonderful, isn't it? And decrease the opacity like that. Maybe you can change the blend mode to say soft light and change it to say late sunset. That also looks cool. Increase the opacity like that, and you can play with it. You get the idea. And that's how you use just curves, adjustment layers. Just start playing with that, stacking them all and create the look that you desire. Just create the big effects first and then create the small effects, fine-tune stuff and get the desired result which you have envisioned. So envision it. Apply the dominant effects first, fine-tune the small effects, achieve the result. I hope this video helped you, and if it did, make sure to give us a like and also don't forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe, ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss a thing. I'll see you guys in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.